The term doping refers to the use of substances and methods that are outlawed in competitive sport. We know that motives around both doping use and its avoidance vary widely. Exercisers may use substances in order to benefit more from their workout, to make exercise sessions more enjoyable, or for purely aesthetic reasons. They may avoid certain substances because they don't want to break the law, or because they are worried about the consequences on their health. And athletes, whatever their level, may steer clear of any substance because of their personal beliefs about drugs and medicines, or because they're worried they'll accidentally ingest something that will cause a positive doping test. Yet many athletes use dietary supplements to protect body and health. Some athletes use non-prohibited substances to enhance sporting performance, and a minority of athletes, to achieve that same goal, will cross the line and use prohibited means. Research suggests that athletes set their own lines for what they consider as fair and unfair. These personal lines may not be the same as the regulatory hard line set by the World Anti-Doping Agency. What athletes think is the right way to distinguish between legal and illegal enhancements is an intriguing question. A question we asked 4 high-performing endurance sports athletes. To compare the views and experiences of these 4 athletes, we set up a panel. World record breaker endurance runner Susie Chan was in the chair. The rest of the panel was made up of pro road racing cyclist and anti-doping researcher Daniel West-Mattleman, British distance runner and anti-doping researcher Jake Shelley, and GB ultra runner and passionate anti-doping spokesperson Robbie Britton.
So the first question we have is, what challenges have you faced as athletes within your discipline in order to try and compete at the top level? So, I mean, obviously with the theme in mind. Go on, Robbie.
Like the challenges that I've faced is that I started as quite late. I started doing all right at a national level, and I stepped up to the European level. And the main challenge was that everyone was a lot better than me. And even then, you start seeing the small kind of things, why people take shortcuts. People that instead of going, oh yeah, I'm just not very good. I've just got to improve. Some people might quickly jump in and go, oh, they're all cheating. But it's actually, so the main challenge I've faced over the last, and I'm still facing it now, I'm still not at the standard I want to be at. There's still a long way for me to go. But yeah, it's kind of just accepting that my own ability and my own, focusing on my own progression.
What sort of, just to give us an idea, what are you aiming to win, or is that what your goal is? When you say your standard is...
So when I first went out to Europe to race, I would win a UK race, and that's the competition is a fair bit lower. I'd go out to Europe and I could be way down the field. Like, I think a good result was top 50 at one of the big races, and that to me was quite a big shock. I'd gone in quite naively thinking that, well, I'm really good. And then you get bigged up. Social media these days makes you think you're a superstar. And then you go into these things, and it's... One is the expectations people have of you. I have people saying to me, and they compare me to athletes. Like, I could be sitting here now, and there'd be people that follow me as an athlete for Great Britain, and I would say, well, even when we come in did the physiology test, and one of the athletes I coach was with us here at Kingston Uni, and Jake's there as well, and the athlete I coach, if he'd have said about your times and stuff, he'd have kind of thought, Robbie's GP athlete, he'd be near you on a 5K, and I wouldn't be anywhere near you. They have this kind of elevated idea of how you should do, just because you've won some races in the UK, and that to me was a challenge, just how the expectation of how good I should be, and the fact that there's a long way to go. So I suppose that, I don't know if for you as a cyclist coming in, was that, did you step up?
I really like to learn more about my body, how it works, and to get up on a higher level. I think you have to invest a lot of time. I think especially cycling and running is very time consuming, and so even in school I had some kind of a position of a freak, because I was just always on my bike and not on that many parties. But I also had a really, really good friend. So when I came to a party, then they were really happy, and we also had really nice parties. But I think even in my early career steps, I had to make decisions for the sport. You have to care about the nutrition and all the stuff, and even with 13 or 14 years, it became very structured because I also had a coach, and we have all these training, all this testing, endurance tests and all this stuff. So yeah, it was very time and I think also financially consuming. Yeah.
So when you started cycling, were you were competing at quite a high level quite
I think
straight away?
It started when I was 14, 15, yeah, on national level, and then I think was 16 on international level, yeah.
So yes, yeah. Jake?
Yeah. I guess one of the key challenges in being a runner is injury. You hit the ground repeatedly, time and time again. Stuff's going to start hurting. So that's definitely one thing that you face. I guess with the theme in mind, like, I don't think I'm quite good enough that I've been directly affected by doping. But I think there are some more insidious effects of it, like standards for European Championships, standards for World Championships are informed by the global lists. And if you look at the prevalence of doping, those standards are clearly going to be affected by doping. So it has a filter down effect on the opportunities that are available to someone at my standard. So that's, I guess, one way in which doping presents a challenge to someone at my level.
Yeah.
Because I suppose the injuries could come from well-accepted training philosophies being based on people on athletes that are doping, and then that filtering down.
Yeah.
We're trying to replicate things again. Training methods are becoming more and more obvious. You're seeing what other athletes are doing.
Yeah.
We try and replicate that, or at any level.
It might just not be realistic.
So do you think that feeds down into, say, more amateur level athletes? So, I mean, maybe even using ultra running as an example. I mean, it certainly is one of those sports that has grown enormously in the last few years. And do you think there'll be people at sort of more my level, more the mid packers? Do you think that they will be influenced by the sort of growing
the training of doped individuals? I suppose. Well, I think in all sports, we all try and at my level, I guess you look up to athletes above you. So as an amateur, I started out at the back of the pack, and I looked at what the people ahead of me were doing. And if one of those at that level, there wasn't most likely anyone doping ahead of me. We'll probably come on to it, but painkillers are used in ultra marathon, and I might be seeing someone using painkillers perfectly legally, doing well at the end of a race and trying to replicate that and not knowing what was going on there, or caffeine or other things like that. So that's... And then you look at training. I mean, for us it's things like Strava, cycling as well. You just look at someone's training, you think, oh my god, they've done like 4 hours today, they're doing 4 hours tomorrow, and okay, right, that's okay. Am I just not working hard enough? Am I not doing enough? Am I resting too much? What a ridiculous question. Oh, I know. But then you start thinking, do I not want it enough? Am I not pushing myself enough?
I think you have to choose your role models carefully, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to be a role model at every level, even like a club level. You have to think of the people. I think that's, for me, one of the responsibilities of the higher level athletes. I pick out athletes that I can believe in.
Yeah.
But if they're not there,
and how does that cross over to cycling? Because obviously, it's got quite a somewhat tainted image.
Before I turned professional, the famous riders always told, you have to train harder and longer, and if there's no race on Saturday and Sunday, you have to train 300k a day. And when I was younger, I tried, maybe you just have to train more and more and more, and I tried it, and after a while I understood, I just get an overtraining, and it just kills me. So I had to make that bad experience, that my body isn't capable of riding 300k a day, and then to improve my performance. So I had to learn about from that.
Okay. So actually, we're going to go back to a subject which you just touched on about painkillers. So the question, I'll actually read out the question and then you can interpret it. So what is your position on doping in sport, and what does it commit you to within your discipline? So, for example, Jake, would you take painkillers, would you have some caffeine if you're feeling a bit and feeling a bit tired, and just because you've got a session go later on in the day?
I think I'm a bit of a purist. I don't take painkillers, and I don't like coffee. I don't drink.
Okay.
Coffee.
So tick.
Yeah. I think it's a personal opinion. I think like, ibuprofen is probably not very good for the lining of your stomach. Caffeine, I think might have a short-term effect, but long-term.
Supplements.
I might take an iron pill if I'm going to train at altitude.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So training at altitude, actually. So just touching on that. So if somebody were to buy a little altitude, you can get them, can't you? Altitude tents for home.
Yeah. I don't use an
What's
altitude tent myself. Don't have an issue with anyone else using it. Everyone draws the line at different point. We compete day in, day out against people who are born and raised at high altitude. I think using an altitude tent recreates living on top of a mountain in a more convenient way. Whether you think that's doping or not, I think is just where you personally draw the line. I think that's fine.
So you think it's fine?
It's
Okay.
within the WADA rules. I don't. It doesn't. Just that's just my personal feeling.
Okay.
Is that doesn't cross the moral boundary for me.
And supplements and painkillers.
Yeah, I think supplements can kind of fall into more than one category.
Yeah.
And it's a fuzzy line.
Yeah.
I tend to steer clear of them as much as I can, because I think it can become a slippery slope, and there's all sorts of research about like the gateway hypothesis, where you may be more likely to take a banned substance if you take lots and lots of legal supplements to start with. Not that I think I would ever be in danger of taking a banned substance, but I just don't feel the need for them in my training either.
Yeah.
So don't really take many supplements. No.
Daniel, what about you? Sort of what would you? Where's the?
I wouldn't
grey
take
area in for you?
painkillers for performance enhancement. I think I have a different position to caffeine because I really like coffee, and in cycling we have some kind of copyright culture. So for me, it's quite important.
So you take it. So if you're cycling, I'm having a bit of a lull. I'll have some.
Yeah, I would never take caffeine pills.
Yeah.
But if it's just in the form of coffee, I think then it's okay, and you don't have that high amount of caffeine, and I think it's really okay. Regarding supplements, I think it's very dangerous if you just take it and you don't know if you have any deficits. So what our team or my team does is we have our blood. We check our blood, so we can see if we have any deficits from iron or calcium or all the stuff, and then the doctor would say, okay, you should eat more some kind of that, or you should maybe take these pills, but not pro forma that you just take 30 pills a day.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Robbie,
I mean-
you ever had loads of Coca-Cola at the checkpoints?
Coca-Cola, yeah. I mean, caffeine. When I started out, the first people I started looking up, I remember the first race, 100 miler I did, I was near last. Took me near 28 hours. I had blisters like this on both heels. And I borrowed someone's trainers. Mine had been stolen. So like, I was in like borrowed like work clothes and stuff. I wasn't an elite athlete by any sense of it. And people ahead of me and people around were taking painkillers. It was just like, well, yeah, you're in pain. You take these painkillers. And at the time, I didn't put anything towards it like, well, you're taking a drug and what's it doing? It's enhancing your performance. I have used painkillers in races, in performances. I feel like it's quite a taboo subject, and I don't know how I feel on it at times. I've gone through races and not used them whatsoever. And I've done fine.
Yeah.
I finished 11th at the CCC, which is one of the 100-kilometre races.
So you'd take the painkiller because your legs ached? Would it be, or would you actually have a niggle you want to quieten down? Or
You know,
what
if
would
I'm
be the
being
trigger?
completely honest,
Yeah.
I might convince myself I've got a niggle,
Yeah.
but in reality, you know you're hurting,
Yeah.
and you know it's going to make you, it's going to block that fatigue, and you're going to run better because of it. And I honestly don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I'm talking paracetamol. Within WADA rules, I think it goes all the way to tramadol. I think I'm right in saying that it's within the rules to
Yeah.
take that tramadol.
I've seen tramadol been prescribed in races
I've seen
by
yeah,
doctors. It's true.
and that kind of thing goes on within ultramarathons. I've never to me that kind of that's my line is drawn way before there.
Right.
If I can't buy it in Sainsbury's on the side of a shelf where a kid can reach it, then that's bad. But then I spoke to a Polish athlete about, like, I said, Charles, a prescription drug. Surely you've got a line there. He says, well, it's not in Poland. We can buy that over the counter. So then does that move his line? And why should the line be decided by how you buy something? So for me, yeah, it troubles me of talking about it, and I have used it to help with pain in my legs.
So have you just consciously decided to not to take it going forward, or would you?
No, I have
race?
still used it within races. I
Yeah.
don't go and plan to take painkillers. I don't, and it's paracetamol I'm talking about here. But it's weird because it helps you run, makes your legs feel better. 100k in your legs, you have some paracetamol, you feel better. Caffeine does the same thing. It blocks those pain receptors.
Yeah.
People do it for other things. So it kind of seems weird to say it in a room like this with people here, and I wonder if people have got different opinions on someone saying it. But
I think it's fair to say, because obviously I'm not a cyclist or an extraordinarily fast runner,
But I
but
think-
it's quite rife actually to have I think most people at the start line of an ultramarathon will have some painkillers in their bag. It's sort of just a kit check thing. Sorry.
I think especially tramadol it's a big discussion also in cycling because I think it's very, very dangerous, not for yourself, also for your opponents, because it affects your ability to ride your bike. I think
Painkillers.
Yeah,
Tramadol.
No, tramadol.
Tramadol, yeah.
I think you're not allowed to drive your car, but then you're
Yeah.
allowed to ride
Yeah.
in a bunch of riders and go down the hill.
I was quite
wheel on wheel. I
surprised
think it's
when I saw it
really
being
stupid.
doled out by doctors.
we
yeah.
have, is it rhabdomyolysis within ultra distance? People use ibuprofen and it shuts their kidneys down. We've
Yeah.
had people.
Yeah.
One chap took 4 within a 100-mile race and ended up in intensive care. People.
Yeah.
So again, from a health point of view, I would never touch
But
that.
he'd taken it before as well. It was just one. I think it was just one. He'd done it before in a race, and this time he took too many. And
Yeah,
ended up in
he
intensive
only
care,
had
yeah.
4. He just gets coupled with dehydration and muscle breakdown, and it causes issues. So again, anti-doping rules, it's performance enhancing, but it's also dangerous to health.
But there's an awareness. I think
start-
there's a certain level of awareness, which people might not be aware of what the effects are on ibuprofen in that if they're doing this extreme exercise, or too much caffeine, for example. I think people don't quite know themselves. They're not that well educated to make decisions. If they see people around them in those situations taking them, then they think it's okay, and they wouldn't know.
Did you find at college in the US, I've heard of athletes coming back saying that was caffeine pills and stuff were quite... Again, that for me, weirdly,
Yeah.
caffeine pills feels like a line, but paracetamol, yeah, that's fine. But sorry.
Yeah, no, there were a couple of things at college in America, like the coach once during the cross country season when there was like colds and stuff going around, encouraged the whole team to go to the nurse and get a vitamin injection. And I think like 90% of people, yeah, fine, just sort of...
Just a multi. Is it a
unthinking-
multivitamin or?
Yeah,
what's it, just a-
I don't think most of the people who took it even knew what it was. And it was that blind trust. And I think that's quite a dangerous thing, is that in my opinion, to be really good at sport, you kind of have to have complete faith in what you're doing. Because when you're standing on the start line, if you believe in the training that you've done, you're far more likely to win. But then it's like, how trusting do you become? Like, if your college coach says, go and get a vitamin B12 shot, do you just do it, or do you check what it is, or do you like question yourself whether that's something you actually want to do? So you can be too trusting, I think, of people you put your faith
Was there
in.
any sort of education around that?
No,
that
literally
sort of
none.
when you-
The
when
coach at my university was a man of few words. He said, there's a lot of colds going around, going at this injection. There wasn't a discussion, a debate around it. There was, that was what we were told
What
to
you
do. But I don't remember being told to use painkillers.
I know.
Yeah. But not that I don't think it happened in college sport in America. But yeah, that wasn't my personal experience.
It might be nice to ask what the pharmacists think of this.
I really like your point about the tramadol, because actually, yeah, absolutely, we would recommend, that's something that we test for, and you can get disqualified from driving for having in your body. So I think that's a really valid point.
It's interesting that people think it enhances the performance. It's a funny drug because it has a bit of serotonin in it, so it's make you euphoric and you may feel good, but it's in a while it's going to make you drowsy as well. So cycling gets it's absolutely very dangerous.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how people use it as a performance enhancer. So
Yeah, I wouldn't know how paracetamol enhances your performance, but
Probably a placebo.
ibuprofen I think is a really scary one
There's
as well.
some very recent research taking place at the
I'll do
moment
that.
where they're showing because it blocks the sensation, that it's a kind of delaying fatigue. So in terms of like endurance events, you're able to push yourself a bit more because you're kind of blocking that sensation. But it's quite in its early days.
But you would have to take it regularly.
Yeah.
If you take it when required, it's not going to do the trick.
Don't look, if it's the placebo and it's working.
No, but on that note, actually,
Yeah, I'll take them.
magic feather. On that note, actually, I mentioned it earlier, actually, before we had this panel discussion about ibuprofen gel. So you can get some very strong, and I remember putting that on my legs because they were aching in a race and thinking that was it. I feel fine now. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea if, in your opinion, actually, if you think that's got any.
There have been trials comparing the NSAID gels, and because there wasn't evidence, they are recommended for us as pharmacists. They're recommended for patients with osteoarthritis, so they are the second line after paracetamol, and they work for certain people. So there is evidence behind them working for pains and aches, but they are not going to be as powerful as a regular paracetamol.
Well,
or NSAID
yeah.
or
Yeah, well, I didn't want to take the ibuprofen, but I thought the gel might be. It's not going anywhere near my kidneys. It's going straight on my legs, which was my thought at the time.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
You'll get some systemic absorption.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to actually thank you very much. Just going to move on to the next question. So with the recent government report on TUEs, it's got brackets Wiggins case here. How do you view this with regard to overall use and bending of the rules and ethics in sport? So I guess this actually is, it's a difficult question to answer. I guess it's talking about that grey line. Jay?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Wiggins case. That's like a cycling thing, and from an outsider's perspective, it seems like there was an abuse of the TUE system amongst certain cycling teams, and I think that was completely unethical, and that clearly crossed a boundary, or where I would draw a boundary on fair and unfair sport. They were using medically prescribed drugs for performance enhancement rather than for genuine medical need, which to me is
It's not even a grey area, is it?
Not to me.
But
no.
it's technically not broken the rules. It's just unethical.
Yeah.
But it has if they're using it for that reason.
But they've got a doctor to say that they need it. So you could say if you can convince a doctor that you need it, then you're still within the rules. But
Yeah, but that's my recollection. But isn't that what happened? Or-
Yeah. The well, I don't need to explain it, but
Yeah.
my understanding is that the TUEs have been granted for example, an inhaler for a certain asthma condition, hay fever, something like that, and it was coincided quite nicely with just before Grand Tours. There's a lot of people saying that if you were that ill, you wouldn't be able to compete, let alone.
Yeah.
But suddenly, funnily enough, it coincided with the greatest victories. Just something I don't know enough about the subject, but it's.
If it helps to put in context, the case was he used inhalers, asthma inhalers, in training, which is not against the WADA rules. So he did not break any of the competition rules he used in training. But the argument is he crossed the moral line because he didn't need it for medical purpose. So that's the grey area. That he did not break the WADA regulations because he did not use that in competition, and it's only prohibited in competition.
Okay.
He used that in training.
Okay.
So the argument is he crossed the moral line rather than the hard line that is for the WADA rules. So that was the story.
Was there one aspect where it was? So I saw an interview where they said it was preemptive because they expected his hay fever to flare up, and my understanding was that would potentially, if something used preemptively for a medical condition, is that breaking the rules?
No, because it's not. He used that in training, and in training the substance is not prohibited.
Okay.
But he did not use it for medical reasons.
I think there's been one at a conference that Andrea and I were at. I got the chance to speak to Brian Cookson, who was the head of the UCI during the period when a lot of this was going on. And one change that he said that had been made under his watch was that now 2 doctors have to sign off on every application for a TUE rather than just one doctor. I think when you have one doctor signing off all the TUEs, it's rife for corruption.
Okay.
And having 2 doctors checking over every TUE application seems to eliminate that. And there has been a precipitous drop in the number of TUEs gained in cycling.
So this is as a result of this report?
No, this is predated that.
Okay.
But there's a table of the numbers of TUEs granted in cycling, and from sort of 2012 to 2017, it's gone from in the hundreds down to in the lower
I
numbers.
think it's also because the inhalators are not on the list anymore. There's just a threshold you are not allowed to exceed, so you don't
Right.
need a TUE
Yeah.
anymore. So
For
I
certain
think that's-
substances, changing classification could also affect the numbers.
Yeah. So I mean, if they're crossing a moral line, but technically not breaking the rules, just as a cyclist viewing another cyclist, how do you think that makes the everyday cyclists feel looking towards that athlete? Do you think that makes it seem okay, or do you think he's lost a lot of fans?
I think now it makes, for some people, makes it more easier to use it, because because of some people use it for years, and maybe there's knowledge that it enhances your performance, and now you can use it to a certain amount, and I think that's pretty dangerous, because you don't need a TUE or anything anymore. I think it's cost efficient for the WADA and for the federations, because you don't have to manage all the stuff, the TUEs, but I think it makes it more easier to go to the grey line.
Yeah.
Daniel, would you have felt like someone like Bradley Wiggins had an unfair advantage over you if you were to race him, with him having that TUE beforehand? Do you feel like you would be would you feel aggrieved at the fact that he was allowed to
I think it's really suspicious that he had his TUEs before his Grand Tour wins. But I don't know if he really had his medical problems. But if not, then I think it's definitely an unfair advantage. And some riders or former dopers, they admitted that they used it just for performance enhancement. Like Thomas Dekker or Rasmussen, yeah.
Do you think there would be a better way of governing TUEs, in the sense that there should be like an independent body that issue the kind of TUEs, that you have somebody who's kind of signing that line that they're...
So all the athletes have to go through this body to get the required drugs.
One of the things I've heard suggested is that if you want to get a TUE for an acute flare-up of some illness, then that's fine, but you're also not allowed to compete within a week of getting that TUE. Because if you are acutely ill, then you're not going to be able to compete.
But there will be some conditions which are just sort of...
There are other conditions which are not acute. For instance, you can get a TUE for insulin, which might need long-term use, and that wouldn't fall in under that rule.
Yeah.
Because, you can have a TUE for insulin over long-term and still compete.
Yeah.
That's why it's there, is it? The TUE system's there for performance-enabling drugs rather than performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
And one of the downsides of this, the Wiggins and all these kind of scandals, is that it might stop athletes that previously would use that system to be able to just do the sport they love.
Yeah.
From actually feeling that they're capable of doing it, feeling guilt, even applying
because
for
they
it.
won't want to use
because there's a stigma attached to it, because you're
Yeah.
looking at, oh no, I don't want to be seen like that.
Yeah.
But someone who needs an inhaler because of because of acute issues or something like that.
I think the principle being, if you're so acutely ill that you need medications that you have to get a TUE to take in competition, then you shouldn't be competing in that competition anyway.
So even if somebody needed an inhaler, for example.
Well, there are lots of other asthma drugs that you
yeah.
don't need a TUE for.
Okay.
If your asthma is so bad that you need the strongest dose,
Yeah, so
the strongest medication.
I recently had to have half my thyroid taken out, and I did not know until after the operation that thyroxine can actually affect performance. I only found this out because my friend is an athlete, and it was news to me. And so something like that, if somebody had a thyroid problem, and the levels of thyroxine which you have to have will fluctuate over the course of the year. So what's your sort of view, just off the back of that comment, if somebody is not well enough, or what would you say?
Yeah.
I know it's very specific, sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, thyroid is a substance that I think has been abused in the athletics world, and I think that the way that you're diagnosed as having low thyroid, there isn't a clear boundary. So some doctors will prescribe you thyroid medication at a higher, what might be deemed a healthy level, whereas others you'd have to be far lower before you get prescribed thyroid medication.
Is there any, I mean, just going back to your point, is there any actual, because I just don't know, is there any sort of a body of people that you can go to get advice on that sort of thing for the sort of more average of athletes? No.
Well, within ultra distance.
Yeah.
So, well, I went to the UK Anti-Doping Educator course for as part of British Athletics for ultra distance. So I've put myself out there within the elite squad, but also I have mentioned it on social media. You've got to follow me. Come on.
Oh, no, I don't.
But again, there aren't people out there to turn to. People go on.
As an advice,
GP,
they're not going to know. You see,
The
so my point is
intricacies
that
of
I
thyroid,
did not know that until I spoke to somebody saying, I might need ceftriaxone. They said, oh. And she told
It's a
me,
bit
and I was
dodgy,
like, yeah, I had no idea. I mean, obviously, I'm not. I think it's sort of the level I do. These. So going back to actually a point we made at the start, I would never get drug tested because I'm never going to win. But I think that they're.
Do you feel that changes whether you should be aware of it or not?
Well, I want to be aware of it, but I'm just wondering sort of the broader picture. There are people that, for example, in ultra running or in cycling, if it's if that option's there for them, they think, well, I'm not going to get tested, because it seems to be more prevalent these days.
I can never be sure that I won't get tested, so I get often tested in the off season.
But more the sort of slightly more lower level cyclists. Would you think that that they think, well, I'll never get tested, so it's okay?
I think in masters classes, I think it's happened quite often.
Yeah.
But there are in Germany they implemented more testing, and they detect a lot of riders with stimulants and all this stuff. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I really care if people take performance-enhancing drugs to chase Strava segments.
You
know what I mean?
I guess it's more about them than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ego boost for them, but beyond that, they're not winning any money, they're not affecting anyone else's career. You
just think it's just a sort of
I think it's a bit pathetic, but I don't necessarily care.
Yeah.
But I would really care if younger riders or athletes would take it just to reach the...
It's a little sad, I think, a little sad.
Yeah. I mean,
Robbie?
Within ultra running, even so, I've heard of people like we have course cutters. It's not doping, but it's the same effect. It's even easier.
Well, I mean, they literally just cut a corner.
Yeah. A corner we've had a raid runner in Italy get in a car, which is cheating, apparently. But those kind of things. There's people who are doing it at the back of the pack, and you think instead of finishing in 28 hours, they're finishing in 24 hours. And you, what's the point? But then there's people who look up to them. Still athletes look up to them. And within our sport, again, even with any other sport, it could be a youngster at the club, could be the guy that goes down at the club and he's a masters athlete and he's doing something untoward. And then that youth athlete's looking up to them because they're a role model. So there's a responsibility of all of us.
The only reason I would begin to care is if it became a normalised behaviour, and I think if performance enhancing drug use becomes normalised in the recreational athlete, then recreational athletes watching elite athletes might think, well, it's fine. Everyone else at my level does it, so why don't we let them do it?
I think that was
Then I might start to care.
So just moving on to another question, and then have a think if you've got any questions yourselves to ask. So do you think you can compete at a high level successfully then without doping?
Who do you want to go first?
Jake. Let's go Jake first.
Yes, absolutely. I have... so as an athlete and doing my PhD research, I've been interviewing elite athletes who have competed at the absolute highest level and who I have complete and utter faith in. After I finished my master's degree in America, I joined a pro elite group in California, and I lived with a man who finished 8th in the Olympic final of 800 metres and was ranked in the top 5 in the world. And I can't say that he was 100% clean but I can say I'm 99.999%.
But there were 7 people ahead of him, so he wasn't...
There were 7 people ahead of him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty high level.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
so
that was pretty high level. Yeah,
it's a pretty high level. And I have very strong reason to believe that you can become one of the very, very best in the world in the things that I know best, which is middle and long distance running, without doing anything. He ate pizza for dinner. He didn't even look after his diet. Like let alone take performance-enhancing drugs. There were a million things he could have done while doing that to be even better. So I'm like, if he can come 8th at the Olympics and do all that, then you must be able to be really, really good without taking performance-enhancing drugs.
Okay.
So yes, that's a strong yes from me.
Strong yes from you.
I think, I'm really good in time trial. So I became 4th and 5th the last years in the German national championships, and also won international races. And I can say in this distance you can compete at a very, very high level clean. I don't know what's about Grand Tours, because I also rode races that last 11, 12 days, and I can talk about myself that after 8, 9 days, my performance decreases very, very hard, and I think it's things another level, or it's.
Okay.
I think if you would use performance-enhancing drugs, it would especially work in Grand Tours because it's such a big effort you have to.
Long endurance.
Yeah.
Robbie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing the sport if I didn't believe I could.
Yeah.
I want to compete at the highest level, and I want to spend the rest of, a really long time. I'm quite young for 24-hour racing, so I'll figure out over the next 20 years whether I firmly believe I can win a world championship within my sport. The mountain running side of things, it has had histories, more stuff of doping and things like that. Well, we've had doping in 24-hour racing. We had a former world champ, a Russian, test positive for steroids in competition, which I kind of didn't really get. But it doesn't even make sense. But in the mountain running, there is more history of it. Again, every nation kind of thinks the other nations are up to something. It's always the way. The Spanish, the Italians. It's different culture, all this kind of stuff. But I still think you can compete. You can compete at the highest level clean. I don't think I can get to that highest level, the top level. But that's more to do with kind of environmental factors like my upbringing. Being born and raised on the streets of London does not a mountain runner make. I think you can work to be a very good mountain runner. I don't think you can beat someone who was born at a refuge in the Pyrenees and has spent their whole life. I mean, you look at the studies looking at, was it 1988, the marathon study. He took the 3 kind of factors that could potentially, and he kind of hypothesised the top ever potential kind of marathon time was at 1:57, and people laughed at him, and now we're getting closer. World record then was 2:06, and now we're closer to sub 2, but we're not quite there yet. And those, we haven't seen those physiological factors yet. We've got a guy in 24-hour running called Yannis Kouros, this Greek guy, and his world record is 303 kilometres in 24 hours. The nearest anyone's got is 288. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm spitting this cup. That's how I feel about it. It's ridiculous. Right? And this guy was people say he was cheating. I mean, it's just a perfect storm, potentially.
But you had drug testing in that particular event, did you?
What, the one he did 303?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not.
So it leads me on to my next question, actually. So how do you envisage the future for doping control and management within your individual sports and disciplines?
Ultra running, there's basically nothing.
Well, it's less so, I guess, in a way, because there's
nice
nothing established at all.
We have like the IAU is our governing body. When I finished 3rd in the world at the 24-hour champs, which is like a breakout performance for me. I'm sat down at the end. I'm a big advocate of anti-doping. I'm like, come on, test me. And they said that they were happy with the athletes that had achieved the podium positions. I jumped. It was a massive. I was like, I wouldn't trust me. Jeez, that's a massive performance. The way I finished the race was kind of. I think I ran 3 hours 20 something for the last marathon. After 20 hours of running, I was hammering it round. Like I was on another level to everyone else there. Why not? Test that athlete, but they didn't, and it was a little bit disappointing. I was clean, right? So that's fine. And but then what aren't they doing at other championships? We have the Trail World Championships, and they do some blood testing beforehand. They, again, there's no transparency of it. You don't know what's going on. There's a little sign. They won in Annecy a few years ago, and the little sign, blood testing here. Like this is anti-doping. A little sign pointing to a little hut. The thing was empty all weekend. No one went anywhere near it. It was just a little sign on a thing. And I'm walking past thinking, maybe I've missed the elites going in there, but there just needs to be something done. And I mean, we had, so there's another body, ITRA, which is the International Trail Running Association, and they caught someone a couple of years ago at one of our races using EPO. They caught him in competition, an Ecuadorian athlete. He finished 5th at one of his races, and all they do is blood profile. So they look at blood profiling, and then they call in, French anti-doping was called in because there was such a huge jump in his hematocrit between these two races, and he tested positive. But I mean, you've got to be an idiot to be caught like that as well. That's the thing. Like any kind of doper would be laughing at that guy now, thinking, "Why did you get caught doing that?" So if we're seeing people like that getting caught, I think it's definitely going on within the sport. But you have to have faith in. For me, we need to have a governing body that's doing something about it, or that's. I know it sounds seen to me about it. It's not PR. It's got to be something has to be being done. And in competition testing, it would be tiny. It wouldn't be seen as suitable for cycling and cycling world. You need it out of competition testing. But for ultra running, you can't go there yet because we haven't got the money. There isn't the resources. One of our 24-hour guys, he got put on the Adams testing system. He slept on the beach half the time. We had to tell him to stop sleeping on the beach because he had to tell where he lived and stuff like that. It changes his lifestyle. You got athletes that kind of, where are you going to be next week? I'm in the mountains for 8 hours a day, or I'm staying in this remote little tiny hut. So I think just taking one progressive step a year would be nice.
Okay. Is there anything to add?
What were yours? Was cycling? Where's it going?
I think in cycling it happened a lot after the scandals in the 1990s, and the following years happened a lot. There was much more testing, and I think one of the main improvements was the biological passport, and I think they also have to improve it for different parameters, and also listen to the athletes. If they hear something about new drugs or new use methods, because if you just test for old stuff, you don't need the testing. It's just a waste of money.
Okay. And keep up with the... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. It has to be more intelligence-based.
Yeah.
The shocking thing is that everyone in athletics knows who's doping.
Yeah.
But it's really the testing has to be random, and they test randomly, and it's like, well, actually, let's collect all the intelligence we can and then use that to target people who are known to be doping. Because within a closed culture, like within a small culture like distance running, people talk, people know each other, stuff is just known.
Right.
But it's really hard to actually catch people still. But it's like Robbie was saying as well, like it's quite difficult because there's one school of thought thinks, we need more testing all the time, but then out of competition testing is quite an imposition on an athlete's life, and there's a whole nother school of thought which is like athletes' rights. Like, can you actually force an athlete to stay in one location for 1 hour every single day of their adult lives? Yeah. And it's like, well, actually, that's not enough if we're going to catch everyone who's cheating.
Yeah.
And then there's also the funding thing that ultra running is not a big money sport. Athletics is not even a huge money sport. Like the amount of money you'd need to put into testing would be more than you would generate from the sport. So there are conflicting needs from both angles.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the panel?
I actually have one. Is the fact that they stored the sample now for up to 10 years has a deterrent effect, you think? And what is the time frame that would work? Because we talk about resources, we talk about money. Storing these samples costs.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that in your sport? Is it stopping athletes knowing that maybe they don't find the new drugs now, but in 10 years' time they can go back and retest my sample.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if people are that forward thinking.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think.
Think about the next.
I think it is a deterrence because there was these big scandals after the Beijing and London Olympics because they have had a lot of detection afterwards. I think before that was not a deterrence because it was just okay. They store it and nothing will happen. And they
People didn't believe that anything would happen afterwards.
I think many athletes thought okay, they just tell us that they store it and they just throw it away. But I think it was an important thing that they really retested and that they tested so many athletes positive. Yeah.
But
so
that
it becomes
that,
a real danger.
But that still took like Rodchenkov to say, test these samples for these substances and you will find drugs.
Yeah.
So it sort of needs the intelligence and the whistleblowing as well as just storing samples.
Is it a deterrent? Is it going to? I don't know. We can't tell if it's going to stop people. If they're making these decisions, we've got to ask why they're making those decisions.
But you've got to also, I mean, obviously, as you said, it costs a lot of money. Maybe that you think that funding might actually be better directed to keep a close eye on people.
Yeah. Because it doesn't bring back the moment, does it? Like if you catch someone in 10 years' time, the person who came second still
so
misses
you can't
their
give them that moment. Yeah.
So,
I suppose there's limited funds. Do we kind of who do we ask where it's directed?
Yeah.
Because who's most directly affected? Is it the athletes that miss out on those opportunities? Where do they want to see that funding go?
Yeah.
Would they rather see it go into like intelligence-based work?
Well, that leads me on to my question: is do you think is it the testing that's actually effective, or should we change in the direction? Should it be all the stuff that we do about education? You know, Robbie, as a coach, like you know, you said you did the UCAD Educate course. Well, you know, you obviously chose to do that. Do you feel that there's enough education and support out there for athletes, coaches, teams?
No.
That you know, should there be more investment in that direction? So, do you think that would be more effective?
It's difficult, isn't it? So with the education, I think. A lot of the education was based around supplement use and stuff like that, and stopping people accidentally failing tests. There was stuff around the moral compass side of things and getting people to understand it and working with youth athletes. I think if you're working with youth athletes, then the education side of it can be really important, and you're providing a role model. I work solely with adults that come into the sport quite late on. Is education? I mean, I have to believe it. I put my own money to go into that course. I paid to do it myself, and they got the course, but I travelled over to do it and everything. So I feel like it can make a difference. I sat down with where I was training in Chamonix, my friend said, I've just seen Dwayne Chambers on the bus, and he was training. It was just last summer or the summer before. So he was training for the British champs out in Chamonix because his boss owned a house there, and he was on the 300 metre track doing reps, and I was like, well, I was there doing my reps, and he maybe looked decidedly slow. And I'm a fellow Londoner, so I started chatting to him, and ended up going to lunch. And a friend of mine, she's been kept off a podium by a doper, taking EPO, and she was kind of like, she was quite annoyed that I'd gone and spoke to this chap. And I felt like, as someone who's interested in anti-doping, if I'm not talking to these people, the ones that truly understand why someone makes that decision, then how can we ever understand, how can we stop it? How can we educate other people? It's all well and good in a room with a load of educators kind of saying, right, this is how we tell kids, this is how we get athletes that are, I mean, people come to me for it, and I talk to some of the athletes, but they're not with me because they're thinking about those decisions. How do you get to the ones that are kind of making
Do you think that coaches should have more responsibility making the people they're coaching aware then?
I think they should have a responsibility for all around coaches and agents and stuff like that. The pressure's going on to athletes because it's an athlete. Every athlete starts out as someone who wants to ride their bike for fun or just go for a run, like enjoys running. No one starts out like kind of I'm going to cheat the system. They're just like, actually, I enjoy this. Let's see if I can. Oh, I'm good at it. No, I'll keep going. And then somehow these factors come in that make them and every one of us here. There is a situation that could make us dope, and I think that's understandable. And it could be that your life is in danger, or someone that you love's life's in danger. That's an extreme example, but and you're like, right, I'm going to shoot Susie unless you take EPO. Go on in. But everyone's got that kind of that line. And for some people, it's I lost a race, I'm going to dope. And
Yeah.
for others, it's we're here because for us that line is miles away. We honestly feel we're never going to get there.
But going back to sort of Jake's point, I was when you were saying you were at college and you were training, and then people were just blindly doing as they were told. And I think that perhaps that's the point in which the education really needs to be. It should be part of what you learned, as well as.
I think so. I think if you're going to be an elite athlete, you have to be hyper aware of what you're putting into your body in every situation.
Yeah, and it should be part of that process is to actually question everything.
Yeah.
Rather than just accept it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, that's a really good point. What happens if your team doctor says, you know what, we need to take this as a team? Do you question that at that point, or because it's all well and good to say question everything, but if the doctor is saying take this, you're in pain, would you question that?
I think at the end of the day, the anti-doping rules as they are say that you are responsible for what's in your body. So yes, you have to question everything, because if something happens and you do test positive, you have sole responsibility. So I think you do have to question any substance, supplement, medication that anyone else tells you to take, even if it's someone in a position of authority. You still have
Are you saying that now at this level, or would you be saying that, I don't know?
I'm saying this now at this level. Yeah.
What made you? When do you think you learnt that? Do you feel that was put onto you as a youth athlete, or you learnt that?
You talked about your physio actually. That sounded like quite a
that was
crucial.
That was at quite a young age where I just thought like doping is a terrible thing that ruins lives.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have actually put two and two together and think, oh god, I better be really careful with everything that I take. I don't know when I would have started to adopt the attitude that I need to take sole responsibility for any. But luckily, I just because I don't take a lot of medication. It's never really been something that I've had to think very much about. Like, I don't take really anything, so it's just like, and that's just because I don't think I need it, and so I haven't really had to be really careful because I just have a blanket rule on not taking much medication. So.
Does that change in cycling though? Because we hear all these stories about how the young athletes coming through into the teams have basically said, you're not on the team unless you join what the team do.
To be honest, before I turned pro, I was pretty naive. So we had these carbo gels and all the stuff. And when I turned pro, my team manager did a really good move because he went with us to the sports university to Cologne, and there was an expert who told us about the effects and especially the side effects of the famous drugs. And that was really, really helpful to understand, okay, what happens if I take these drugs or other stuff. And what was also very useful was when there was one situation when we went to Belgium to a race. My team manager talked to other team managers, and they talked about their former opponents. And it happens quite a lot that he said, "Oh, yeah, he's dead. Yeah, he's dead." And they must have been 45, 15. That made me really think about, okay, what went wrong with these guys. So I learned pretty early that it might have come from drugs. Yeah.
Wow. I think we've probably got time for maybe one more question.
Unless there's a burning one, I'd
Yeah.
like to refer back to where we draw the line, and that was a sentence that come up quite often. And I fully agree that this is a personal choice. Where you draw the line up to the hard line is your personal choice. How do you feel about the Russian athletes when that line was drawn for them?
It's a very interesting question.
I was training in Albufeira in Portugal earlier this year. I was there last year as well, and the Russians were training out there. We didn't know they were coming, and suddenly the guy cleaning the pool was like, "Yeah, there's the Russians are coming tomorrow." And you're like, "What?" And this old coach is there that you think, "Oh, I would love to speak Russian and just ask you so many questions. I bet you know everything." And just look stern. But I come away from that. It was really like I saw the athletes, and I kind of seeing them training, and they were I don't know, doing drills, doing everything possible, everything right as an athlete to try and be the best they can. And I don't know, I felt really weird about it because I didn't blame the athletes there. There was people
Did you feel
within
sorry
the
for
group.
them?
No, not even that. I just, well, maybe a little bit, but it's made me think about it a bit because, like, for me, that hard line, like where that line is, I feel like an athlete should better put the trust in the governing body to do that. I don't think it should be down to us where we draw a line.
So you don't think they were to blame as such?
It's hard. I think that it's not as, again with those guys. I think you can't. Like we've got these boogeymen that we ostracised, the Russians. When there's plenty going on in other countries, and there's plenty going on in countries that cast these stones, and it just looks different. It's done it. Okay, it's not state led. So yeah, no, I question it.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that is because I spoke to a former athlete who was very strongly anti-doping, and she said her opinion changed after the Russian scandal came out. Before that, she was angry at the Russian athletes. After that, she actually used the word sorry for them, because it wasn't really their choice.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked the question.
Anything to add, Daniel? Jake? Do you feel sorry for them?
Daniel?
It reminds me a bit of cycling in the 1990s. I think there was a lot of pressure, so in some way I feel really sorry for them. But on the other hand, yeah, I made my own experiences with them because at the university we won the silver medal. It was a bit suspicious because the Russian riders who won the gold medal won with a huge gap, and we've never seen them before and afterwards again, so that was really suspicious for us. I don't have any proofs that there was something wrong, but yeah, with the background information in mind, I wouldn't like to exchange my silver medal with the gold medal, because I have the freedom to decide for my own behavior, and I'm really happy that I'm in that position.
Yeah, very similar for me. Like, given the culture that I've grown up in, and given having had a lot of time to think about why I do sport, what sport means to me, the entire point of it is the process. I enjoy the training. I enjoy seeing how good I can get doing that training. I don't necessarily enjoy I enjoy the success, but that's not the point of it. The point is not to win stuff. The point is to train hard and make myself better. So if someone had said to me, you can take this drug to win the gold medal, I would take no satisfaction out of winning the gold medal, because the whole point of the sport is the process.
Okay.
But that is obviously a product of the culture that I've grown up in.
Yeah.
Whether if I'd grown up in,
it is part of the process is to be as best they can, and if that little TUE gives you the edge, then
it's not even just being I want to be the best I can, and I want to find out just how far I can go clean. But you look at other societies. I mean, in Russia, plenty of people have been coming out of poverty. I mean, look at the Kenyan athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you're only like me as an athlete, it's a hobby. This is like, I do this because I love it. I could earn more money doing anything else.
We could all earn more money doing
anything else, literally anything else. But if I was living in a field and I was a half decent runner, and my only chance of like going to not even just kind of becoming world famous, just like getting a scholarship or something like that, goes you. Then what if your kids are starving and you think, or your family have been starving for generations? That's a whole different question. And we can't. Like, I think we're very quick to throw scorn on athletes and people making these decisions, and it's not. We can't. We don't understand that maybe in that same context we might have made a different decision to how we are now.
Yeah. Anything to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Any more questions from the audience? No? Okay, well, it just leaves me to say thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panel. Jake, Robbie, Daniel. Thank you very much.